G'day, Professor Joseph Drew here from the University of Technology, Sydney. It's been brought to my attention that some people couldn't make it to the public forum last week. I know there was other things on, obviously, but also we had the coronavirus and some people chose to avoid public gatherings. And it's been requested of me that I'd give you some of the information that was communicated during those forums for people who couldn't attend. Now, I've already given you the first part of the forum that's in the video about one-off de-amalgamation costs. What I want to concentrate on here is the second part of the information. Obviously, I'm not going to spend an hour on the video like I did in the forum. I'll give you the main points. So, there's going to be continuing, ongoing savings and ongoing costs associated with the de-amalgamation. So if we look at the first row here, employee savings, you'll see that there's savings from the first year, but they're very lumpy. There's a big jump here in year 3, there's a big jump here in year 5, another big jump here in year 7. What's going on there? Well, as I said in my report, and I've said to you previously, I don't believe in forced redundancies. I don't believe we should destroy someone's life to get a so-called efficiency. People aren't efficiencies, they're people. They're people with mortgages and dependents and children and wives or husbands. So what I do is I model in what's referred to as natural attrition. So I know the age of these people, I know when they're going to retire. The year after I expect them to retire, I model in the saving from their position not being filled when they leave. So that's why it's rather lumpy. Now, if I wasn't constrained to that, we'd have a lot more savings a lot earlier. But from what people I've met in the community, no one wants to see anyone being made redundant over this mess. Let's do it in an ethically, morally justifiable manner. There's also additional employee costs. We're going to need some extra staff. So a lot of you will be aware we only have one accountant. Well, if we end up with 2 councils, we need one accountant in each council. We only have one executive assistant. If we end up with 2 councils, we'll obviously need a new executive assistant. And there's a couple other little positions that have to be altered or amended. There's additional governance costs. I've actually got zeros in here. What this is about is going from our current structure of 9 councillors with a mayor and a deputy mayor to a structure of Gundagai with 5 councillors, one of which will be the mayor, and Cootamundra, 7 councillors, one which will be the mayor, no deputy mayors. I've reduced them down to the bottom of the remuneration scale. There's a scale of payments that can be made to councillors. I put them down the very bottom. It actually saves a little bit of money, $3,000 a year, but consistent with what I've done throughout this whole process, I'm giving you the worst case scenario. So rather than banking that 3,000 savings, I just put it in as 0. There's travel savings. This is purely on a survey for 1 week of mileage. Now, there was a key staff member that travels between the councils a lot that was away that week, so the real figure's probably a little bit higher. And all I've done is multiplied it through by the Australian Tax Office allowance that they give per kilometre of travel. So that's the cost that the tax man says it costs us to travel a kilometre in a vehicle. Now, what's not included in there, so that's the cost of your vehicle, fuel, maintenance of the vehicle, depreciation of the vehicle. What's not included there is the staff time, of course. So if a staff member is spending 45 minutes to an hour driving along that Muttama Road, they're not working for you. Under de-amalgamation, there'll be a lot less driving, and your staff members will be sitting at desks doing what they want to do, serve you the best way they possibly can, instead of sitting behind a steering wheel, being bored out their brains, not being able to serve you while they're driving. Additional assurance costs, what's that all about? That's the compulsory auditing and the new audit committees that are coming in. That's the projected cost of those things. Additional grant income, the only one I put in it so far is the library grants. Now, I haven't indexed it, so what that means is I haven't put this number up as time goes on because I've got no guarantee the state government will. They probably will, but I can't guarantee it, so let's not put it in. Remember, with everything I'm trying to do, I'm trying to give you the worst case scenario. So there's lots of capital grants you'll know that we've missed out on. There's some parts of operating grants that we missed out on. They're not in there because I can't guarantee them. So once again, this is a gross underestimation. I know it's an underestimation. I want you to be pleasantly surprised, because this de-amalgamation is saving you far more money than you anticipated and costing you far less than what you anticipated. So I'm giving you worst case scenario, very conservative, prudent estimates. Additional FAG income. What are FAGs? They're financial assistance grants. That's the main source of grant income for councils, for local governments, particularly rural councils. They get a lot of financial assistance grants money. It comes from the Commonwealth government, from the federal government, but it goes through state government grants committees. Now, back in 2006, the federal minister at the time declared that following amalgamation, for 4 years following an amalgamation, you couldn't get less in your FAGs than what you would have got if you'd been separate councils. The combined amount as if you'd been separate councils. So in your case, they would calculate Cootamundra, they would calculate Gundagai separately, and then they would add them together. And you had that protection for a period of 4 years. The reason why it came in was the 2003-2004 New South Wales amalgamations caused a lot of problems, because a lot of New South Wales local governments following amalgamation realised that their grant income, which they rely on a lot, particularly in rural areas, went down substantially. So the federal government stepped in and made this rule that for 4 years you had to be protected. Well, that protection period's almost over. When it's over, in all likelihood your grants will go down substantially. That's why the protection was put in there in the first place, because we know they usually go down. Now, I've been in contact with the Grants Commission several times, and they won't give me sufficient detail to work out how much it will go down by, but I'm almost certain it will. I haven't modelled it in because I can't be sure of it, but there will be additional FAGs involved in de-amalgamating, which means you'd be better off de-amalgamated. Savings from eliminating diseconomies of scale. As I've told you previously, I've modelled it. It's about 11% per annum. So it's costing you 11% extra every year because your council is bigger than it should be. It's now inefficient. It's got diseconomies of scale as the economic term. Now, that's a lot of money, 11% of your budget, an awful lot of money. But I can't be sure of it. I'm not running both these new councils. I can't be sure we'll lock in all that 11%. So unlike KPMG, who locked it all in, I didn't. I know you're going to save money. I can't tell you precisely how much it's going to be. It might be 5%, it might be 6%. It's better not to put it in at all. Better for you to have the worst case scenario and get pleasantly surprised by the outcomes from de-amalgamation. Now, second last row here, you can see the annual savings. First year you'll be behind, normal. Second year you'll be slightly better off. Third year we're starting to save money. By the time we get to the 10th year, when a lot of these senior staff have left and we haven't re-employed them, you're saving about $450,000 a year. Now, what that means is that, as you know, your council is no longer long-term financially sustainable by the New South Wales government's own metrics. You've got consistent deficits when you exclude capital grants, which is the New South Wales government preferred measure of operating position. There's a lot of budget repair to be done, and there's a lot of pain involved in that, and that's happening in a few years' time, where we have very, very shortly, whether we have de-amalgamation or not. Fees will be going up, rates will be going up. It just has to happen. We're short of money. Now, what I'm saying to you is, under a de-amalgamation scenario, there's $450,000 a year at least less pain than what there'll be if you don't de-amalgamate. Now, over 10 years, I've just added them up as we've gone, cumulative savings, $2.4 million. So $2.4 million less pain if you de-amalgamated than if you stay in your current structure. And remember, that's a worst case scenario. In all likelihood, I expect you to be save much more than $2.4 million. If we went over 20 years, it wouldn't just be double, it would be closer to triple, because a lot of these savings come in, as you can see, midway and towards the end of this 10-year projection. I only project 10 years into the future because that's all we really have control over. That's consistent with the fact that the councils do 10-year planning. So there's some other questions that I get asked all the time. How many councillors? I told you 5 Gundagai, 7 Cootamundra. Who should sit on the inaugural council? Now, I've looked at the legislation. It appears to me that the Governor can proclaim the existing Mayor the Mayor of Gundagai, the existing Deputy Mayor the Mayor of Cootamundra, and that the existing councillors can be considered duly elected to the areas where they live. We'll have a few vacancies, of course, 2 vacancies in in Gundagai and 1 vacancy in Cootamundra, I believe. And those vacancies have to be filled within 3 months. I'm proposing this de-amalgamation happens on the 1st of July. That would be the best time, because systems in a council are all set to end on the 30th of June every year for the financial year. So there's a lot less work and a lot less stress and a lot less expense if we can start the new financial year with our new de-amalgamated councils. If that is done, the legislation says that vacancies must be filled within 3 months. We have local government elections in September anyway. So there's no need to have an administrator. We've had administrators in the past, 2 of them I believe. I understand that at least one of them was an absolute disaster. I don't see why your voice should be silenced. I don't see why you should have an administrator. I can't see any legal impediment for your existing councillors to continue to represent your interests throughout this process. When should de-amalgamation occur? 1st of July is what I think we should do. I think it can be done if we can get a decision quite quickly from the Boundaries Commission and the Minister. I've done all the work in my report that needs to be done. It's much more detailed than the reports that I read during the 2016 amalgamations. I read most of them. I've given much more detailed information, much more robust, much more reliable. It allows for a quick decision, and with a quick decision we can get this de-amalgamation done on the 1st of July. I believe we need about 8 weeks prior to the 1st of July to do the work that has to be done to start off with 2 new councils for the new financial year. What should happen with service levels? Well, from the day that you're de-amalgamated, you go back to exactly what you had prior to amalgamation 4 years ago. It was only 4 years ago. We all remember it. Don't expect anything extra. Expect to go back to what you used to have. And indeed, during the first 12 months, I believe each council should look to see where they can reduce service levels and where they can reduce costs. What will happen to rates? There will be a need for a special rate variation under either scenario. Whether you're de-amalgamated or not, rates have to go up. There's been far too much damage done to your budget over the last 4 years for this amalgamated council. We need to do significant budget repair work very quickly before we get into trouble. Now, if you're de-amalgamated, the rate increases will be less than what they will be if you're not de-amalgamated. As you saw previously, it'll save $2.4 million over 10 years, so at least. So if you're not de-amalgamated, you can look forward to an extra $2.4 million of pain over 10 years. If you are de-amalgamated, there will still be rate increases, but they may not have to be as severe. Well, they won't have to be as severe. Fees, they're going up too. Some of our fees weren't covering our costs. That's clearly not sustainable, nor is it ethical. And some of our reserves are short. Most of you know we did a lot of work on water in Cootamundra. We're about to do a lot of work on sewer in Gundagai. That has to be paid for. And they're big ticket items, millions and millions of dollars, and we have to build up those reserves so that we can give you the services that you absolutely need. It's as simple as that. I don't like recommending fees or rates go up, but there is no alternative. Far too much damage has been done over the last 4 years. The only way to fix this damage is to put up rates and fees. So what I'm getting to here is that a lot of people are under the illusion you can have a de-amalgamation and everything goes back to the way it was prior to 2016. No, we've still got a lot of pain to go through because we've got to fix this. I believe we can fix this mess. I believe both communities can feel a lot better off and have a lot more control and a lot more knowledge and feel a lot closer to local government, and we can end up with the 2 best local governments in the state. I firmly believe that, if we can only get people to make good decisions now. Now, in relation to special rate variations, it's normally a lengthy and expensive process. I believe under the legislation the Minister can direct IPART, who are the people that rule on special rate variations, to consider that you've already met the requirements, which will save a lot of expense and time for the new councils, and it will make it cheaper and more streamlined. We can get these rate increases in and start repairing the damage that's been done over the last 4 years. Now, attitudes of residents and ratepayers. I put up a video about the survey results from the public forums I did. I think it's very important you watch it. I think that it's very important a lot of weight gets given to those surveys results. These are people who have been watching my videos, who came and listened to a 1-hour forum. They are as well informed as anyone on the Boundaries Commission or anyone in the state government would be. You've been given the best information that's available. And the decision that was overwhelmingly made by people who were well informed is that they want to de-amalgamate. It's your local government, it's your decision. I say you guys are perfectly capable of making good decisions. Let you make the decision this time, because last time the decision was made by other people, and it was a really rubbish decision, as we've all learnt to our dismay and regret. The impact of de-amalgamation, well, quite honestly, you're not financially sustainable long term at the moment. Don't panic, it's not a short term issue, but long term you're not sustainable. You used to be prior to amalgamation. The only way you're going to have adequate, equitable and appropriate services in the future is for us to make drastic changes. I believe the boundary change, being de-amalgamated, is a very important part of that process. And it's quite simple, guys. Back in 2016, people said that it was good enough to upend your lives for saving a $3 million over 20 years, based on some really rubbish consultant work that was never going to be true. It was just pure fiction, and bad fiction at that. I'm sitting here telling you I've got a detailed report that will go up shortly, you can read it for yourself, where I show conclusively that you'll save $2.4 million over 10 years. Now, if it was good enough to upend your lives and go against the community's wishes to save $3 million over 20 years, well then it's certainly good enough to go with the community's wishes now and de-amalgamate you in order to save $2.4 million over 10 years. Now, this is really important. I've got two very important things to say. First of all, your current councillors, your mayor, your deputy mayor, your councillors, your staff, your current GM, your senior directors, they're not the ones that put you in this position. It's not their fault. They did the right thing. They got help when they were faced with a big mess, when they realised what a big mess they had in front of them. They got help, which is what I'm doing for you now. It's not their fault. It's the fault of people who made some really bad decisions in 2016 and shortly after the amalgamation. The second thing I want to say to you is get off the fence. You've got all the information you now need. You're either for de-amalgamation or you're for remaining amalgamated. You make the decision. It's you that bears the consequence. But get out there and make sure your voice is heard. And the best way to make your voices heard is to put in a written submission saying clearly what you want and why. I'll put up a video showing how to do that. When you're out in the community, when you're getting served at a shop, or you're talking to your children or your grandchildren or your friends, talk about this. This is the biggest decision that will face these two communities this generation. Get out there, get off the fence, make sure your voice is heard, and make sure that this community gets the best it can get. And I believe the only way you can get the best outcome is if you, the community, are driving it. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.